Hi, this is Sideways 8. I'm on a website called minds.com a lot. And on a forum, there's anti-SJW, and I post there a lot. And I started using the terms in the discussion about anti-SJWs, about my theories. I was starting to use the terms I use in my philosophy. In one of them. And he started saying, and this guy's name is Hitler was right. He said he would love to hear more of my ideas. So this is one of my ideas. This is because of Hitler. I hate you, Hitler, for making me do this. But because of Hitler, I'm going to describe one of my philosophies known as Hemlock theory. I have pushed this towards many people. Some people say it's brilliant. Some people say I might be onto something. Some people just acted like I was crazy. And some people say it was straight up stupid. I'll leave that to you to decide after I get done describing it. But I think I'm onto something. I'm very, very, very certain it is. But I'll talk more about that later. Hemlock theory is named because of the story of Socrates. Socrates being the father of Western philosophy. Now, the story of Socrates is that Socrates was considered the wisest man in ancient Greece, or at least Athens. And what happened is that he was the type of guy who would always ask you questions. If you said 2 plus 2 equals 7, he would ask you, why does it equal 7? Prove it. He was a man who was concerned about validity, reason, truth, and objectivity. And he was always trying to get you to clarify what you were saying. He wanted to make sure under no uncertain terms what you were saying is what you were saying. And he had followers and students and admirers. But after a while, when you act like a gadfly for a while, it kind of starts irritating people. And the people he irritated, I would classify as the mob and the leaders. And the mob started pressuring the leaders to do something about this gadfly, Mr. Socrates. And so what they did is the leaders brought him to trial and convicted him on the charge of corrupting the youth and heresy. Because he was always asking about the validity of an idea of gods. And so he was condemned to die, and then by suicide. And he would be ordered to carry out this sentence by drinking a glass of hemlock. His students, followers, and admirers managed to finally convince the leaders to, at the last second, have his ruling overturned. And they went into his cell, and what they did is they said, hey, Socrates, you can go free. But Socrates decided to, being a man of integrity, at least in his mind, to drink the hemlock and then kill himself anyway. Now, the story of Socrates in Hemlock theory is to represent, like I said, but if I haven't said it, to represent a process that has been happening in time immemorial. The process of 3 classes of people, classifications of people who've been interacting and thus having an effect on society. I call this the Hemlock process. Now, the 3 classifications of people, according to Hemlock theory, are known as sages, represented by Socrates and his followers, admirers, and students. The Machiavellians, which would be the leaders, and they are named after Piccolo Machiavellian. And then the mob, who I call the witless, the ones who go into hysterics at any drop of a hat. These people have been interacting, and what ends up happening, just like in Socrates' story, is since the sages are a minority in the population, what ends up happening is, and since the Machiavellians have their power from whoever's the majority, which would be the mob often pressures, either A, reacts and takes matters in their own hands and kill off the sages and kill off their ideas, or they pressure the Machiavellians to work against the sages, or against the sages. So over time, what happens is we have less smart, less wise, and less good people over time, and they get weeded out of the gene pool, which leaves only two classifications in the gene pool to most likely happen. The majority would be the mob, the hysterics, the witless, and the Machiavellians. Now, the Machiavellians are people who are predatory leaders. They only care about one thing: power. And unlike the sages, they don't care about validity, they care about what gets them what they want. And since the majority of the populace is the witless, they prey on their prejudices and weak points. So what they do is they come up with lies and ideas that tickle the fancy of the witless. And what happens over time is all the ideas of the sages either get perverted, corrupted, or erased from history, leaving only bad ideas. Now that means over time, the Hemlock process, the only ideas that are left are the very toxic and very bad ideas. And the only reason these ideas make sense to us is familiarity. The Marxists would call false consciousness. I would call this artifact haze. So, under Hemlock theory, based on this, it doesn't matter if you're a fascist. It doesn't matter if you're a white supremacist. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian. It doesn't matter if you're a social justice warrior. It doesn't matter if you're a feminist. Hemlock theory states all those labels are to be disregarded, and you are to be classified by the following three groups of people. Are you a sage, a Machiavellian, or one of the witless? And how you determine this is based on these people's behaviors, reactions, how they interact with the world, and how they speak in their word structure, and how they interact with other people. A good example today in the anti-SJW world would be Sargon of Akkad. He is a moderate, and as a result, both sides, the far right and the far left, hate him and now have ganged up on him and trying to smear and discredit him. Another good example of a Machiavellian would be Akina Sarkeesian. She just made up wholesale, based on what I've heard, wholesale the lie that she was a gamer, then came up with this narrative that all gamers are misogynist, against women, are sexist. And that got the witless on her side. That got her power at the UN. So now the people who are fighting corruption are seen as the bad guys. Now, what happens is the ideas that Machiavellians come up with are designed to fit the fancy of the witless. And these ideas are toxic. They are emotionally and psychologically damaging. And those are the only ideas that are in circulation. So the only way to make society great again is to adhere to Hemlock theory and believe that any other idea except Hemlock theory, think that Hemlock theory is the only valid idea, and any other idea is invalid, toxic, and designed to lead you to oppression and destruction and intolerance and all this other stuff. That's Hemlock theory summed up.